are so many apps out there, it's hard to figure out which ones to use. And when it comes to travel, this is where I've tried to make it as easy as possible for myself, and over all the countries I've been to, which is around 40 at this point, I've been all over the world. These are the ones that I go to time and time again. Today I'm going to share with you my very best travel apps for transportation, how to get around, for lodging, and figuring out which activities to do, how to communicate with your friends and loved ones back home, how to keep your phone safe from hackers, plus lots of other tips on things I've learned as I've wandered my way around the world. I can't wait to share it with you, so let's get started. Welcome to the Active Travel Adventures podcast. I'm your host, Kit Parks. Today we're going to be reviewing my very favorite travel apps that I use time and time again as I wander my way around the world. These are the travel apps that I use to help make my trip go smoothly wherever I am. Apps can make your travel life so much simpler, especially when something goes wrong. So I put together a pre-trip checklist of my favorite travel apps that you should put on your phone so your phone is loaded with the right apps before you hit the road. Let's start first with transportation. If I'm trying to figure out what my transportation options are, so let's say I don't really know if I want to go on a plane, a bus, a train. I don't really know because I've never even been to this country before. The ones I go to in Europe in particular is the CAMINO app. And remember, I'll have all these in the show notes, so you don't need to write them down. And I'll also have them in the newsletter that you can get by either hitting the contact button or emailing me at kit@activetravelaadventures.com and asking to be getting this once a month newsletter. I'm going to go pretty fast, so don't worry about writing it down right now. You'll be able to get it all later in the checklist. So the first one is CAMINO. This used to be called Go Euro in Europe. And this, as in a couple of different ones, will outline these are the different ways that you can get there. So it'll list whether you can get there by bus, train, car, plane, what have you. It'll give you a rough idea of the cost, how long it's going to take you to get there. So you have all these variables in one screenshot to see, I think I'd like to take the bus, or no, I think this one's worth coughing up the money for the plane. And it gives you a rough idea, like I said, of what it costs so you can gauge the time to see if it's the right timetable, etc. So CAMINO is number one. Another one I like is called Rome to Rio, and the 2 is the numeral 2, not TWO. So those are great European ones. And another new one that's come out is called Bookaway. And they're very strong in Asia, and they're starting to make great inroads in Europe. And they do the same thing. And what they do really well is the buses and some of these local transportations. It's hard to get the schedules. And so the Bookaway not only will show you the schedules on the countries that they cover, but also you can book the tickets. And sometimes you can do that as well on the other apps I mentioned. And again, in Europe, a bus company that I like is called Flixbus. They have super nice buses, and it's very reasonable. On the app, you can go ahead and pay, so it's going to be in the English language, which is very convenient, and you'll know the exact schedule and the ticket price of it, obviously, since you're booking it. So like I said, these will help you decide whether you want to take a bus, train, or plane, or car, and what the best way is to get around. And a lot of them do allow you to buy your tickets via the app, and again, this says in English, that you don't have to worry about a language barrier. If it doesn't allow you to buy the ticket, I would recommend when you're on the ground to get your ticket at least a day in advance in case there is some kind of a snafu. It doesn't happen often, but it did happen to me once that it didn't list that I was traveling in off season. And so I went to the bus station and there were not only no buses that day, no buses that winter. That's another story. So like I said, I now make sure that I do get my ticket at least a day in advance. So that's how I get around on the ground. If I'm flying, I always make sure I have the app for the airline I'm flying on. And the reason this is really important is, let's say, particularly with all the chaos going on these days, your flight gets canceled. A lot of times you can reschedule on the app instead of waiting on that long line that's going to be you and all your new 200 some odd friends that just got off the plane all scrambling trying to get to the same place you're going. So before you fly, make sure you've downloaded and set up with your account and your flight information your airline's app for that trip. If you're going to have a really, really long layover, you may want to consider, this is going to be a paid one, it's called Lounge Buddy. And if you're going to be stuck in an airport all day, it may be worth a nominal fee to use a lounge so that you can relax and get out of that terminal seating and chaos and noise and confusion. And a lot of the lounges too offer free food and drink. You have a comfortable place to sit, sometimes a place to work. And if you are somebody that has access to lots of the lounges, let's say you're a really frequent traveler, the Lounge Buddy app will let you figure out which is going to be the best lounge to hang out in for the day. On the ground, and again, I suggest you do all these apps before you even set out on your trip. Make sure that if it's one that you have to pay for something, like the next one's the ride share apps, that your credit cards that you have on file are current, and I mean the expiration date, because you forget that you may have put it in 3 or 4 years ago. You've gotten a new card. Did you go back and update the app? Probably not. So go check all those things, because you don't want to be waiting outside a terminal or a street somewhere, and you don't want to be putting in your credit card information in the middle of nowhere. I usually use Uber or Lyft. They're great options. You can see right away if you're going to be able to get something quickly. You'll have an idea of how much it's going to cost. And like I said, just make sure that you have it all uploaded. Your credit card information is current before you head out on the trip. Now, from transportation, let's move to lodging. I stay in all kinds of different places. If I'm going to be going to a hotel, I actually do a two-prong thing here. First, I'll go to booking.com, and that will give me a good overview of how much hotels cost in the area that I want to go in. So then within that, there's a couple of hotels that I have a loyalty program with, mostly choice hotels. So I'll look and see of the choice hotels, where are they? Because you'll have the map. So you can look on book, see the map, and then say, oh, do I want to do this, or do I want to pay a different price to go to somebody that's outside my loyalty program? That booking.com gives me a great option there. Sometimes I book with them, or I will book with them if I'm not going to use one of my loyalty programs. But if I decide I want to use my loyalty program, then I go to, in this case, let's say the Choice Hotels app, go there and I'll book directly, because it's just simpler with the points and all that, and I already know what the price should be to make sure I'm getting the right price on that. Now, let's say I don't want to stay in a hotel. Let's say I'm going to be there. I try to stay at least 5 nights anywhere I go, just so I'm not traveling all the time. So whenever possible, outside of the U.S., I'm not using them so much in the U.S. anymore, I will use Airbnb. Vacation rentals by owner would be another one. I just tend to use Airbnb. In the U.S., I think their fees have gotten outrageous, so I very rarely use them in the U.S. anymore. But when I was over in Europe, I saw the fees, rarely a cleaning fee. That made it much more worth my while, and I much prefer having a living area, a kitchen, sometimes a laundry, all those kinds of good things. So Airbnb is, when I'm out of the country, one of my go-tos of places where to go. If I'm going to an expensive city, let's say I'm going to Paris or Venice or something like that, I will often use the app Hostel World. And you may say, ooh, hostels, that's gross. But they don't have to be gross. They have a lot of hostels that are super nice. And in many cases, I found, the locations are outstanding. It could be an old mansion converted to a hostel because nobody could afford to keep up the mansion anywhere. And that happened to me several times in my most recent European trip. So the prices are right. Often I can get a private room, sometimes with an ensuite with a private bath, but usually I'm sharing a bath. It may be a female-only bath, so that's nice. But for maybe a fraction of the price of a hotel in some of these major cities, I can at least get a private room, which works for me. I'm going to give you a tip. If you think you're going to be stuck for a long time in the city, you don't want to hang out at the airport, there's another app you can use called Day Use that allows you to see which hotels will rent you just to go hang out at the hotel. You'll get a room, take a nap. You can use the facilities. Say you want to use the gym or the pool, or rather than hanging out at an airport lodge, you might be better off taking a cab to an area hotel that offers the day use pass that you can pay for that. It's a fraction of the overnight, and you've got a great place to hang out. If you are on the road camping and RVing, hat tip to my friend Susie Blackshaw, who turned me on to my favorite app when I was out in Sophie Girl, my camper van. It's called iOverlander. Not only can you find free or paid places to park your RV or camper or camp, But you can also search, let's say you just want to fill up your water tank or whatnot. You can use the screening tool to find the amenities that you're looking for. I found it much more prevalent in the West. I don't see it as utilized on the East Coast, but out West, it is a fantastic app to figure out where to spend the night. If you plan on spending any time in a federal campground, you're going to need to download the app recreation.gov or go to the website. And a lot of these too, you can do it on the website if you don't want to do the apps, you prefer to work with your laptop or such. So on the checklist, I will have all active links so that you can go figure out which is the best way for you. But when there is an app, it's probably best just to put it on your phone. So if you want to stay on any federal lands, you need to download the recreation, or you need to go to recreation.gov, either the website or the app, to book your reservations. And I think since COVID, it's now required. And I don't think they're going to go back to that because I think it worked out pretty well for them. So we figured out how to get there. We figured out where to stay. Now what do we do when we're on the ground? How do we get around? So it's important to have a good map app. I tend to use, I don't know why, but Apple Maps when I'm in the United States and Google Maps when I'm out of the country. I'll have to think about why I do that, but that is my pattern. And the cool thing about these maps is while you have Wi-Fi or your data, you're using your data, you can set up the destination, say you get the directions, and then you can put your phone in airplane mode, which is where I keep my phone when I am traveling outside of my area. It saves you on the roaming and using up your data. And these maps, with that directions already in base, will work offline. It still talks to the GPS and it can get you where you're going, but you're not using your data plan and you don't need to have Wi-Fi to do so. And here's a tip. Whenever you get to your new lodging, pin your location. And what that is you go into the map app, open it up, and then the blue dot that shows you where you are, put your finger on there, and then a pop-up's going to ask you, do you want to make a note of this location? And say yes. And so you've pinned it. That way, no matter how lost you get lost in Paris, wherever you are, you can find your way back to your home or your hotel or your Airbnb or wherever you're staying. This is also great when you're parking your car in an unfamiliar area. You're going to be tired, you don't know what street it's on, you don't know which airport parking lot it is. Pin your location and you won't forget it. It will always get you back to home. Other really popular map apps are maps.me, and if you're going to be in a major city, City Mapper is great as well. And if you're driving around, this is both in-country or traveling. My new favorite with all the high gas prices we have today is Gas Buddy. Particularly when I was out in the van, that Gas Buddy, you can look by map, you can do it by, I was using diesel, but I can put regular gas or whatever it is I'm looking for. I can put in my favorite gas company if I'm loyal to a gas station, and it will show me the current prices. This is a crowdsourced, but I don't believe I've ever found the price to be incorrect. So pay it back when you do use it, mark whether the price is correct or not, and let's keep this thing going. There was many, many times that simply by driving a half a mile away, I saved 40 cents a gallon. It makes a huge difference on saving gas. So you're not. I'm not going to drive all over the place to save a little bit, but if I'm going to be pulling off anyway, I can look at the app and see, do I want to get off this exit or the next one, and where to go to get my gas. And here's another tip too. If you are loyal to a certain brand, say BP or Shell, or you like a particular one of these travel center truck stop places like Love's or Pilot, Flying J, download their app so that you'll get savings and benefits as well. So we've arrived, we've got our home, we know how to get around once we're in town. How do we figure out now, what are we going to do? There are lots of apps that will do that. My favorite one that I go to is Viator, Viator. They were bought out by TripAdvisor, which I hope keeps it the way it is, because I've stopped actually using TripAdvisor. That got too almost spammy for me. But Viator is a great resource for figuring out what the cool day trips and tours are in the area that you're going to visit. It's got a very clean website. It's easy to book online. You usually have an option of canceling with no penalty. It's very clear what the cancellation charges are. So if you're going to a busy place, you can make sure that you can see the things that you want to see and not waste your time getting the tickets while you're there. You're spending your time on vacation, being on vacation, instead of making all your plans. Another great app for figuring out what to do in a city is called Visit a City. Of course, it's not for every city, but for a major city, you might have some luck there as well. Another pro tip, anywhere you're going that has a tourist base, Google free walking tours and then whatever the town is, Venice. And you will see throughout the world, they have these free walking tours that are usually, they're tip based. And it's usually a 2 or 3 hour tour to all the key highlights. And you get to outside a brief introduction to whatever the historic or notable site is. So that way, for, I usually give like a $10 to $15 tip depending on how good the guide was and how long it was. I have a great overview of the city, a little baseline history about it, and then over the next few days, I can drill down a little bit deeper on the things that caught my fancy. And I also get a better overview and feeling of the city. I certainly will still get lost. I'll have an idea, a little bit of the layout of the land. But when I want to get out further in the land, let's say I want to go on a hike, you know how I love to hike. My favorite go-to app is All Trails. This is a paid app, but to me, it's been well worth it. I can download whatever trails that I think I'd be interested in hiking, and there's many different options you can put on your downloads. But just like the Maps app, once it's in my phone, it tracks me. So I can go up in the mountains as long as I got plenty of juice on it, and I can stay on trail. And let's say I do get lost. Let's say I'm not paying attention. I look down, I say, oh dear, I'm way off the trail. But I can either work my way back to the trail with this app, or I might see another trail that's nearby that I can get to, which is probably what happened. I probably just came to a fork and went the wrong way. I can get to where I want to go. So it's a nice safety backup feature for me. And it gives me some confidence to go on hikes that I might not ordinarily go on if I don't know the trails and I'm going solo. So All Trails is my favorite hiking app. So we've had a fun day. We're back at our lodging. Everything's going great. We want to tell somebody about it. How do we do this for free? I don't buy the SIM cards. I don't know why I don't do that. Well, generally I don't know. I've never been very techie. And so I don't want to worry about it. So what I do is basically when I'm traveling, I keep my phone in airplane mode, and then I use Wi-Fi when it's available. I virtually always have Wi-Fi wherever I'm staying. And as a go-to, McDonald's usually has great Wi-Fi, and you can stand outside the building if you don't go in and still use that if need be. But if I want to check in with my loved ones, if I want to see my loved ones, since I have an iPhone, I use the FaceTime app, which if I'm using it with Wi-Fi and my loved ones also have an iPhone, I can call or video chat with them absolutely free. And if you have a Google account, Google Hangouts does the same thing. This is a great free way to stay connected, particularly if you're going to be on the road for a long time, and it lets your loved ones know that you're okay. If you are communicating with other internationals, however, they don't seem to use those apps as much as they do the WhatsApp app. And WhatsApp is cool in a couple different ways. You can, number one, it encrypts your data, which I like because it keeps all that stuff safe. But it allows you to message, you can video, you can share photos, and call all for free as long as you're using the Wi-Fi. You can make groups like we did when we were on the Costa Rica CAMINO. Everybody in our group and our guides are all in this WhatsApp group. So at the end of the day, if somebody had a particularly nice photo they wanted to share, they could post it in the group and people could download it or not as they wish. At least they get to enjoy seeing it. We could coordinate dinner plans. We could figure out all sorts of things using the WhatsApp. And also, since we still have the group, periodically, even though it's been a few months since we've returned, if somebody's done something cool, all of a sudden one day we'll look down and somebody's popped up an app. Oh, Patricia and Kevin went to visit Tony and Sue. How cool is that? So the WhatsApp is a must-have, and particularly if you're going to be talking to other folks internationally, that's the app they use. Let's say you're talking to somebody that can't speak English. So if you're going to a country where they can't speak the English language, then you'll want to use the Google Translate app. And on this app, before you go, again, while you have Wi-Fi, it doesn't take long, download the language that you're going to be needing. And so once you have that in your system, you can type in whatever it is that you want to say, use in English, say, where is this hotel? Where is the Joe Blow Hotel? And it will translate that for you, so you can just show your phone to somebody and it'll have that in their language. If you don't want to type, or for some reason you can't, you can use the mic. It'll do the same thing. Here's an example of me using the microphone and then using the microphone too to speak to someone. Or it spells it out. You have your choice. Where is Main Street?
Où est la rue principale?
Very cool, right? If you come to a sign and you can't read the sign, you hold the app up with the camera option and it will translate the sign for you. So let's say you're at a restaurant and you want to see what a certain thing is. You can type in, you can hit the little toggle and I'll use Spanish. So you see the word pollo, P-O-L-L-O. So you type in P-O-L-L-O with the toggle, you put the Spanish first, it'll translate chicken for you. Or if you want, whether it's a sign, a menu, you can use the camera app on the Google Translate app, and it can translate the menu for you. It'll do just chunks of it. It won't do the whole thing, but it'll do chunks. But this is all great, also great for street signs. So there's no reason to be intimidated now if you can't speak the language. Of course, I still always recommend that you learn the polite thank yous, pleases, and excuse me's of any country that you go to, just to show respect. And don't forget, pantomime works great, and that's where you get a lot of laughs and get a lot of fun interactions with the locals. So we've kind of got the whole mojo on with how we're doing our trip, but now how do we stay safe? And when I mean safe, how do we keep our phones safe? A few years back when I was in Portland, Maine, I was at an Airbnb, and apparently a hacker also had the Wi-Fi code. They probably stayed at the Airbnb and had it. And so I got hacked. And that was a very, very expensive boo-boo on my part. I didn't have any special security at that point. So I do pay now for the SiteLock VPN. And what that does, VPN stands for Virtual Private Network. So when you're on public Wi-Fi, hackers can easily eavesdrop on what you're doing. They can, if your passwords aren't encoded, they can see your passwords. And like I said, not being very techy, I'm going to err on the side of having the most secure protection that I can. So I have this virtual private network. It's not overly expensive, but there is a cost to it. But what I had to pay to get the mess from my hacking cleaned up, it's been well worth it for me. It's not 100%, but what it does is, A, it hides your IP address. Your IP address is the computer address. So whatever my number is, every time that IP pops up, that's how they're tracking us, is on those IP addresses. So it masks your IP address. It may give me an Atlanta IP address. So nobody knows exactly who's inquiring about something, where I'm going on my phone or my laptop. But it also encrypts my messages, my passwords, etc., so the thieves can't steal them. So the VPN, or virtual private network, is something I strongly recommend that you get. Like I said, I pay annual fee for the service. It's good for 3 devices, so I only have 2. I have a phone and a laptop, but that keeps me protected. So, and I also use this at home all the time. Anytime I'm going to my banks or my investment account, I want to double check that I'm going through my VPN. And if they have the app too, as an aside, the apps are going to be more secure than the website. So if you have the opportunity, and generally speaking you do, download your banking apps, if you Vanguard, that's what I use, the Vanguard app. So that way I can check on things with my VPN and the app, which kind of gives me a double layer of protection. The last couple of apps that I want to talk to you about are ones I go to all the time, at home and when I'm traveling. The first one is my regular weather app that just comes on my phone, and you can add the cities or wherever it is that you're going to, just so you can get an hour-by-hour forecast of what you should be expecting that day, so you know how to dress, or so you know if you want to rearrange your activities a little bit. And if I want better details on that, I use one of my other favorite apps called My Radar, and this will allow me to see, let's say a storm front's coming through. I can double check on my weather app to see, is this going to be like a lot of rain we're talking about or a little bit of rain? And I can see how much rain and how violent if the weather's going to be as the front's coming through. You can visually see the satellite imagery of the weather patterns. So this will let me know, again, do I want to go out now or do I want to wait a little bit and let this front pass through? Because it looks like once this big blob passes over me, it should be pretty clear skies after that. And when I'm out in nature, the other one I absolutely love is called Skyview Lite. This is an app only. You can't go on a laptop to see it, so you have to use a phone. They have Android and Apple apps for it. But Skyview Lite lets you see the stars, lets you understand the constellations in a really cool way. So if you have not downloaded anything like that, and it's free, totally cool. So it's Skyview Lite. So I've gone through, I believe it's like 32 of my favorite apps here, that out of the gazillions of apps out there, I'm sure, well, these are my favorites. I can't test and see them all, so I'm sure I've missed some of yours. If I have, how about emailing me, again at kit@activetraveladventures.com, and letting me know so I can try them out, and if I do another roundup in the future, perhaps I'll get your app on there as well. I hope this has been helpful for you. As I make mistakes, I try to fine-tune the ways that I travel so I can pass on any knowledge that I learn and help you so you don't bumble in some of the ways that I have in the past. Thank you so much for listening. I sure do appreciate it. Until next time, this is Kit Parks. Adventure on.